Good morning. Let's open our Bibles to the book of Matthew, chapter 18. And I want to read what I believe was a parable given by Jesus at the end of this chapter. And this is in relation, Jesus gave this parable in response to Peter asking about, how many times does he need to forgive somebody in a day? So Matthew chapter 18, verse 22. Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore the kingdom of heaven, because of this, because we ought to forgive somebody at least, well over 7 times in a day for the same offense, one person every day, in the same day for the same offense, because we're to forgive him way more than 7 times in that way. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold, with his wife and children, and all that he had, and that payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay you all. And he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what had been done, they were very grieved, and came and told their master all that had been done. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? And his master was angry and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. And this is the punchline, I believe. So my heavenly Father also will do to you, if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses. Now, I just thought I would, I was thinking about just sharing this with the children because I would like us to think about some of the money, distant from the value system that they had here in this context. But so let's start with the denarii. This is a coin that I'm showing you that was a Roman coin, and there was a Greek coin. I believe I'm getting the Greek and Roman correct here, but the Greeks had one coin, the Romans had another coin. There was the same value, but I believe this was the Roman coin, the denarius. One denarius, 2 denarii. Okay, so the plural. If there's more than one, it's a denarii. It's denarii. If it's just one, it's a denarius. So how much is a denarius worth? I didn't have a sense of this at all. I believe the Old King James says that the debtor who was forgiven went and found another debtor who owed him 100 pence. And so I guess somewhat in naivety, I tended to think that this was maybe 100 cents or something like that. But basically, a denarius is worth 1 day's wage. And what is 1 day's wage? I think that we could say it's $100. And I'm going to just take $100 as a modest day's wage. It's arguably probably higher than that. I think the national median is about $115, given a couple other assumptions. But anyway, $100, I just rounded down to 100 because it's a base 10 number, and so it makes it easy. But it's modest. If anything, it would be more than this. So you have one denarius. And then sometimes, in the ESV Bible anyway, you have a measurement that is referred to as a mina. And a mina is a weight measurement, like they would count out how much is in the sack. They dump out until they get 100 denarii. So a mina is 100 denarii. And then a talent is 60 of those minas. Okay? 60 minas would be how many denarii in one talent? So I'm going to do that. 60 times 100. Yes. 6,000. So 6,000 denarii in one talent. And one talent, we said, was, one denarii, we said, was $100. So 6,000 $100 bills is how many dollars? $600,000. Okay. So let's just look at it on a chart. We got one denarius, is one working day of work, $100 value. One mina would be 100 days of work, $10,000 of value. A talent, 6,000 days of work, and there'd be $600,000. The person who was forgiven here in this parable, Jesus said, the king, there was brought to him a servant who owed him 10,000 talents. That'd be $6 billion. That was a very large debt. Now, I was thinking about that large debt, $6 billion. And this person is in debt, meaning that he doesn't have the wherewithal. He does not have the capital or just the freedom to go out and look for the highest paying job. He's probably going to need to take the denarii a day kind of wage, the best that he could do, no doubt. Like, he's probably not going to be one who's going to be striking the lottery or anything and just like somehow erase this. This is a huge, huge load. $6 billion of debt hanging over him. And the king was demanding that everything would be liquidated. Like, what are we going to get? We're not going to get a cent on the dollar out of this investment. This debt would never be able to be paid off. But in fact, just my mind playing ignorant games on me, I was thinking that, well, like, what if the king would have said that I will forgive you 90% of it? You keep 10% of it, I'll forgive you 90% of it. Would that help? How much would that help? Somebody do the math on that? If the king would forgive 90% of this, he would still have a debt of $600 million. $600 million. That 10% remaining is still impossible to deal with. But what if the king was even more generous and would have decided to forgive him 99% of it? Well, again, it doesn't really help that much. He would still be left with $60 million. What if the king would have said, okay, I'm going to forgive you 99.99% of this? He would still be left with $600,000 of debt, representing at least half a lifetime of work. $600,000 of debt. After 99.99% of it was forgiven. And so I think the king assessed the situation and he said, I'm going to just forgive you all. Like, why, from the king's vantage point, why collect on that last 600,000? Seriously. You know, like, if I can forgive 99.99% and have the man live for another half a lifetime, which he might not have had the ability to do, to pay off that debt, he's like, you know what, we're down to such a small amount, let's just forgive it all. Like, take this off of his shoulders, you know. And the king did that. But the man didn't seem to know how to receive that. How should we act if we've been forgiven? How should we live if we've been forgiven? We got our life back. Literally, we got our life back. How, like what should we do? Well, the man had in his mind, and he wasn't even asking for forgiveness. He was asking to just have time. Just give me time. Which was completely unrealistic because he had 60 million workdays ahead of him to pay that off. Time wasn't going to really work anyway for that debtor. But now he's told, you're free. I forgive you this debt. And he was thinking, well, I'm gonna pay it off. I'm gonna collect from my debtors. I'm gonna do everything I can, scratch and scrape, and we're going to pay off this debt. So he goes and he finds one of his debtors who owed him how much? Somebody remember? $10,000. $10,000. That's a lot of money. For me, that's a lot of money. I wish that I could get that. I wish I could collect $10,000. How quickly do I forget that I've been forgiven $6 billion to care about the 10,000? It's like if you were forgiven the same proportion. And I think to get a sense of what this proportion looks like. If you would owe somebody $100,000 and they would forgive it, they would say, you're free, just, you don't need to pay that anymore. Consider it a gift. And then you would find somebody who owes you 17 cents. And you'd grab them around the throat and you'd say, be locked up in prison until you pay those 17 cents. Incomprehensible, isn't it? Like, how can we do that? How should we live when we realize that we've been forgiven such a big amount? Well, maybe not everybody was. In fact, I'm sure not everybody was. This was one particular servant. Not everybody is forgiven the same amount. But regardless, even if it's half that much, or even if it's, like I was giving you some of those numbers, even if it's 1% that much, it's a huge amount. And the point is that we can't pay it. And this is how our debt is before God, I believe. I believe that's what Jesus is teaching us, that when we find it so difficult to forgive the first time or the second time, or by the third time we're saying, listen, I'll forgive you, but let's sit down and have a little talk about this. And, by the fourth time we're gathering the church together and saying, what are we going to do about this offense? Are we not just losing sight of how much? Am I not losing sight of how much I've been forgiven when I find it difficult to forgive? And there's a man who I was talking to recently, and he said that he was forgiven, that Jesus forgave him. But he said that the problem was that he can't forgive himself. And I'm not exactly sure if I know what that means, to forgive oneself, but I'm not really sure if that's a biblical idea. Some questions about that. But regardless of the terminology, I think that there is something to be said for receiving this forgiveness. That it's very humbling. It's very humbling to recognize that I blew it, and I have a huge outstanding debt that I will be unable to pay, and God has just forgiven it. And so to receive that, and to allow that to completely change our life, so that we recognize that, what, I don't owe a debt anymore, and therefore I don't need to collect a debt anymore either. I don't need the $10,000 that I was creditor of. I don't need that anymore either. It's just 17 cents anyway. Seriously, let it go. So it's very humbling, and maybe that's all it is. Maybe that's the answer. I didn't have this all figured out to give a presentation about. I was kind of just going to share some of these numbers with the children, but maybe that's all it is. It's just learning to be humble and to receive it with gratitude and saying, I'm forgiven, thank you, Jesus. I'm forgiven. How can I hold a grudge against anybody? How can I try to collect on any 17 cents that someone owes me? And like Brother Joe was sharing, when we're brought low to a place of humility like that, we're brought very close to Jesus.